morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mourning Coffee Podcast. I am your host, Brooke Carlock, and I am super excited about today's show. I feel like this is one that is going to stick with you for a while. So today, my guests are Dawn and Katie. It's the incredible mother-daughter duo behind Simmons3, which is a nonprofit that was born from really unthinkable tragedy. On December 17th, 2021, Dawn and her family's world shattered when a drunk driver going the wrong way on the highway took the lives of her three youngest children, Lindy, Christopher, and Kamryn, and left Dawn herself with devastating injuries. Out of this heartbreak, they created Simmons3 to honor their children and siblings and basically to raise awareness around real life consequences of driving impaired. Dawn and Katie now travel across Louisiana and beyond, sharing their story with schools and churches and communities, and really just doing amazing work to save lives and shift mindset. So I'm so excited to talk to them today. We will bring them to the stage. So welcome, Katie and Dawn. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Brooke.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Hi. So I have to say, we both have YouTube channels, and ever since I started on YouTube, which was in 2022, I think, I have had people commenting constantly, like, do you know the Simmons3? Have you watched Simmons3? Like, you should do some sort of collaboration with them. So I'm excited that we're finally getting to meet and see each other and do this, because I know my viewers have been kind of connecting us for a long time, because I'm assuming because our kids and died in car accidents, so we have that unfortunate tragedy in common. So I kind of want to start, I guess we'll kind of start back at the hard stuff, just for any of my viewers who don't know your story. But first I have to ask what you guys are drinking, because that's tradition. So I always have my morning protein coffee. What do you guys have? What is that, Katie?
I'm Starbucks, and she's already drank hers.
Mine's gone. I should have got
gone
two.
already. All right.
Sugar-free vanilla iced latte.
Ooh, that's
so I knew it was stevia. Very specific order.
We both drink the same thing. So
oh, all right. All right. That sounds good.
Starbucks knows us well.
That sounds like my kind of coffee that doesn't really taste very coffee-like. Mine's always doctored up pretty good.
Yep.
All right. So, Katie, I think we'll start with you. If you could kind of bring the listeners back to that moment, can you share what that night was like from your perspective, and how you made sense of such overwhelming loss of your siblings? Can you tell us kind of what happened?
So it was December. It was around Christmas time. There was a basketball game that my brother was having about 4 hours north of where we live. He was a junior in high school, so it was a high school basketball game. And my mom actually did not plan on going to that basketball game, but they ended up not having access to a bus or something. So he asked my mom if she could take off of work, and she did. And so it ended up being Lindy, my 20-year-old sister, Christopher, his girlfriend, Marissa, Kamryn, and my mom that all headed out to Monroe, Louisiana. I was at my brother-in-law's house. They had a Christmas party, and my children were with my mother-in-law. So, we were just mingling, hanging around at their house, and my dad called me, which is kind of weird. We don't really talk on the phone that much as on a Friday night. I think it was 10:29 when he called me.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, mom's been in a wreck. It doesn't look good, but she's stable." And I'm like, "Well, where is she?" Panicking. And he's like, "Well, no, I don't want you to get your kids out. It's foggy outside." And I'm like, "No, I'm not even home. My kids are with my mother-in-law. Where do I go?"
Yeah.
So he said they were at Lafayette General. My mom was there, which I knew the kids were with her because at one point my daughter was going to go with them. My daughter's 3 years younger than the youngest one, so they were pretty close.
Okay.
So I knew where they were going and where they at, but I just had no idea, So on the way there, I'm thinking, oh, my mom's stable. Okay, at least she's okay. But I never really worried about the kids. And not that I wasn't worried for them. I just assumed if she's stable, of course,
right,
resilient children are okay. So I grabbed my husband. We hopped in the car, headed to Lafayette General. And as we were pulling in the parking garage, my dad and my brother Shay were just frantic, running down the parking garage. And I stopped them and put my car in park, and I said, "What's wrong?" And they said, "Facebook says there were 2 fatalities." And I'm like, "Well, how do y'all even know which wreck it was? They don't have." It was like, y'all calm down. Like, y'all don't know what y'all talking about. So then I parked the car. I walked to the ER, the clerk, and I asked her, "Do y'all have Dawn Simmons, Lindy, Christopher, Kamryn, Marissa?" And they only had my mom and Marissa, which was really confusing. Like, where would these kids be? So my brother Kyle and I just started calling any hospital we could think of. And I have a very dear best friend that we've been friends since I was 12. And I was texting her updates, and she was, in a radius, giving me every hospital from where the wreck happened and beyond. And I was calling every hospital. No one had them, because we started thinking maybe they were airlifted, maybe, just trying everything.
Right.
And then a state trooper called my dad, and he let us know that the way he described it was the young blonde driver passed away and the other driver in the car. So that was kind of the confirmation that somebody had passed away in our car, but still not thinking, the level of devastation that it was. That same state trooper told my dad that his best guess about where the kids were was a hospital called Opelousas General, which is the closest hospital to where the crash happened. So my mother-in-law had gotten there at that time, and she picked us up, and I had called Opelousas, and they said, "No, we don't have anybody with those names." Well, since he told us that was his best bet, we just headed out that way. And on the way there, I called again, and I said, "I know y'all said y'all don't have anyone by these names, but do y'all have anyone there?" And they said, "Yes, you can come identify her if you want." Oh. And I was like, "Well, what do you mean identify?" And like deep down I knew, So she said, "Well, you can just come let us know if you know her." So we got there, I walked in. There was a security guard. It blinked out for a second. There was a security guard. I let him know I was looking for my sister. He went get a charge nurse for me. Charge nurse came out, and he said, "I just need you to know the young lady I have here has expired." And I said, "Okay." And he was asking me to describe her. My husband said, "Just show him a picture," because I couldn't even get the words out.
Right, yeah.
So I showed him a picture of both of my sisters, and he said, "Come to the back with me." And when I walked in, it was a small room. My mother-in-law and my husband were ahead of me, and there was a white body bag zipped up. And as the charge nurse walked around the corner and unzipped it, I just turned my head and I asked my mother-in-law, I said, "Who is it? Who is it?" And she said, "It's Kamryn." So I called my dad, let him know that it was Kamryn, because we were under the impression that it was Lindy, because Lindy had blonder hair and she was most likely the one driving. So from what the officer said, we thought it was Lindy, but here we are finding out it's Kamryn. She looked perfect. She looked like she was sleeping. I pleaded with the doctor. I'm like, "Are y'all sure you did everything? I mean, she looks fine." And he said when she got here, every limb was broken. She was just barely hanging on. There was nothing they could do. So at that time, my mother-in-law asked the physician or the nurse if he could help us figure out where the other ones were. Because, I mean, I'm 16 years older than Kamryn. So these are kind of like my kids. And, when my mom was disabled, I was trying to find.
You're in charge, yeah.
Right. So he ended up stepping away for a couple of minutes, and he came back in and he said, "I found your brother. He's at Bunkie General." And I said, "Oh, thank God. At least he's okay." And I said, "Well, I know he's not okay, but at least he's alive." And he was like, and that's when I was like, okay. I said, "Well, what about my sister?" He said, "She's still stuck in the car." And I said, "She didn't make it either?" And he said, "No." So just in a matter of 5 minutes, everything had changed. We thought it was just her being injured, but broken leg, you're going to make it, not anything like this. And I remember the doctor writing Kamryn's name on his hand, Lindy's name on his hand, and he said, I need you to go take a ride to Bunkie and identify your brother's body.
Ugh.
So, that I think on the trip to identify Kamryn, I was still, had an adrenaline rush. I was trying to find these kids. But on that trip to identify Christopher, there was no more hope. I knew what I was going in to see. And I just remember that night after I went home, on our way home, I think we were heading home about 4 a.m. And I just remember my mother-in-law drove a Pathfinder at the time, and her interior lights were orange. And I just remember thinking, if this was a dream, those lights wouldn't be so bright.
Mm.
So I knew it had to be real.
Yeah.
And that's the nightmare began.
Did you ever find out what was the reason that everyone was kind of scattered to different places?
So where the wreck happened, it was on an interstate in the middle of nowhere. So 45 minutes north, there was a level 2 trauma center. Mm-hmm. And 45 minutes south, there was a level 2 trauma center. So Lindy never got any help because she had passed away instantly. Right. But the paramedics that took Christopher were more from the northern area. And so he was going to that northern hospital where he was familiar. He said, if there was a train passing or he needed to detour, he knows that area. And he coded on the way. And he just had to divert to the nearest hospital. And same thing with Kamryn, but south. Her paramedic was more familiar with that way, but she wasn't going to make it to Lafayette General where my mom was. So it was just a perfect storm of, everyone ending up where, and this whole time I didn't realize till later when my mom arrived to the hospital, she was assigned a level 35. And when you're a level 25 or above, you're not expected to survive. So this whole time I'm trying to figure out about my siblings. I'm not even realizing that my mom,
what she's going through. Right. So Mom, Dawn, you survived the crash obviously, but you had these life-threatening injuries. Like, what was going on with you? Can you tell us what was going on with you and how did you have the strength? What was it like for you when you heard all this, when you woke up?
Well, I don't have any memory of the crash. My last memory, after the basketball game, the kids were hungry. We stopped at Subway. We ate. And then my last memory is leaving that Subway at 7:06 p.m. that night. The crash was at 9:01. And I remember the time exactly because Christopher had texted me and he said, Mom, tell Lindy to bring Marissa to her house instead of bringing her back to our house. And I remember I turned around. I said, you texting me to tell her sitting right here? I said, boy, you better open your mouth. And we laughed. And that's the last memory that I have of my kids alive and well. So I have no memory. I didn't find out for 2 days that we had lost the kids. I was in, ICU, just in and out of consciousness. I have a very vague memory of when I would kind of come to, I would ask the kids that were there and I'd ask my husband, like, where's the kids? And they would say, Mom, just rest, just get better, and I can just vaguely remember thinking like, why am I not hearing Christopher's in room 210 with a broken arm? But I was too broken physically to be able to just retain the information. So it was I had my first surgery on my leg on Sunday. And Katie that was the first time Katie had come in to see me because she was busy with all the things at the funeral home, caskets, trying to figure out how we were going to do this. And her and I have a very, very close relationship. So when I saw her walk in, I looked at her and I said, Katie, where are the kids? And they had already had a plan devised to tell me the next day on the Monday, because I have other children who live out of state who were going to be flying in on that Monday. So they had a family plan to tell me then, but the doctors gave the okay to do it after I had my first surgery. And so she was the one who, she said, "Mom, I'm so sorry." She said, "They gone." And I'm like, "They gone?" I said, "All of them?" And she said, "Mama, I'm so sorry." But I'm going to tell you, this is crazy to say, but I am so thankful that I was injured in that crash, which I know is crazy to say, but I'm telling you, I could not have taken the weight of that news had I been in my whole self,
Yeah.
And it just, I didn't feel the whole weight of it because of the brokenness of my body and just
Right.
all the medications and just all the things that I was going through at that time.
Yeah. It's strange because I'm thinking my son, who was 18 at the time, was driving the car when my daughter died. And he, very similarly, he doesn't remember anything about the accident. He remembers picking her up at dance class, and he doesn't remember anything else until after he was already home from the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the same thing. He's so grateful. The doctors kept saying like that the memory would come back, and it's been over 3 years now and it hasn't. He still doesn't remember anything. And he's just like, thank goodness that,
Yes.
that I don't remember. And he says the same thing, like even in the hospital when he would wake up every now and then, he'd ask what happened to his sister, and we would tell him, and he would forget again. So yeah, it's kind of a very similar, it's just weird.
Yeah.
It was me recalling while you were explaining that, it was a very similar thing to what he has said about his experience as well.
Yes, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful, as now that, we're over 3 years as well, I can look back and I can just see God's hand on certain things and just, protecting me from, because Lindy was killed instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so glad I don't have that memory, of her on the side of me, gone, so, there are just so many things, the more distance you have from it, if you look back, you can just truly see the goodness of God, even in such a horrific, tragedy that we experienced. I can honestly say I can look back and I do see the goodness of God in so many different areas of what we experienced.
Yeah, that's an amazing way to look at it.
Yeah.
Katie, I want to go back to you for a second. How old were you when all this was happening?
My birthday's on Christmas Day, and this happened on December 17th. So I believe I was about to be 32. So 31, but 32.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, the amount of weight and pressure that was put on you in that situation is just extremely commendable.
I always had like a really feisty personality and, headstrong. And this was when it came into.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always go back. She was something else as a little girl. She had a very, very strong personality, very strong willed. I would say white. She would say black. I mean, just, but, I'm so thankful for the personality that God gave her, because it was, I look back at, all the things when she was a kid, and I just so thankful. I believe God gave her that personality. One of the reasons was for that December 17th night, because, it took a personality like hers to be able to do all what the Lord had for her to do that night, so when your kids have strong personalities, just once they, get on fire for God, and when they call to do something, that strength of just, build up in them. And I tell you, it was just, I look back on what she did that night. I will be forever thankful, because that was just, it was just so much, that she did.
Incredible. So you guys made the decision to go public with your story, which I love, because I feel like so many families grieve in isolation, and it's kind of similar to what I do in sharing my story, because I feel like there are so many, deaths and so much grief and loss that's out there, but not many people kind of share it with the world. So you feel like it's happening in isolation, when really it's happening kind of all around. So what was it that inspired you to start the Simmons3 movement, I would say, and share your story with everyone?
From the very beginning, one of the first things that I told Katie, I said, I just pleaded with her, Katie, please don't let people forget them. Please don't let people forget them. There's something with when you lose a child. I'm involved in a lot of grief groups, a lot of bereaved mom things, just a lot. And the cry of every parent's heart is, please don't let them be forgotten, because they're just your world, and when suddenly, it's just taken away from you, the cry of your heart is that they won't be forgotten. And we didn't have a plan. And then Katie, what you posted
I think I posted a TikTok that actually my brother Shay made, and he had just compiled all the crash report, like all the news articles and stuff, and he voiced it over. And then I shared it, and then it went viral. And I want to say this was maybe January 23rd, so barely a month after the crash.
Yeah.
And then from there, it just kept going. It was a conscious decision, but it was also kind of autopilot. Just, we're just going where it takes us. And looking back now, I think if I would have been in my right mind and not, so just grief stricken, I probably would have thought it was too much work to do, like, forming a nonprofit and all of this. But I guess God was just moving me around like a puppet, because I don't know how we ended up here, but I see how blessed we are to be able to keep sharing their story.
Yeah, I know it means a lot to people. Because like I said, I've had people on my YouTube channel that comment about you guys and how inspiring you are to them. I think people are grateful just to see other people out there struggling and kind of what they're doing to get through it. And I also went the nonprofit route. So I want to talk about your nonprofit in a minute, but I found, so I created Live Like Libby. I don't know if you know any of my story, but my daughter was a competitive dancer, and she was only 10 when she died. So, I created Live Like Libby to provide scholarships to dancers who are in financial need in her honor. And it was almost like a need. And Dawn, what you said resonates with me so much, that you don't want your children to be forgotten, because it was almost immediate. Like I didn't even really have to think about what to do. It was just right away, because people are amazed. Like, how did you do this so fast? And I'm like, I just needed to get her name out there and like keep her legacy going. And
it's the only thing you can do for them. Yeah. And so you should do it,
And, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about grief is that when people are around you, like, they don't want to say their names. They don't want to make you sad, but you want to hear their name. You want to say their names. There's nothing, you want to just keep them alive, in any way that you can. And I really think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about grief. You want to hear the stories. You want to hear their names. You want to tell their stories. You want to say their names. And it's just a really, I think, a big part of the healing process.
I gotta roll it back real quick.
Okay. It's a really big part of the healing process. to be able to continue to write their love story. You know, it's I think the platform that we have been just so blessed to have has been one of the biggest way that the Lord has provided healing in my heart, because I get to say their names, I get to tell their stories. It's very painful because I have to go back to that night, but it also brings very, very much healing in my heart. I still go to grief counseling and all the things, and my grief counselor tells me, I don't think you realize how well you're doing considering. And I really think it has a lot to do with not pushing it away and just living in it, whatever comes, dealing with it at that time and not pushing it away. I think that's how a lot of people get stuck, when they push it aside and not deal with it head on. But who wants to do that? It's painful to go there,
It is.
But it is just so beneficial into the healing,
Yeah. I tell that to people all the time, and I'm sure you feel this also. It's like when I can help, when I'm somewhere at a fair or something like that, and doing stuff for Live Like Libby, and I have a little girl come up that wants to take dance classes, and her mom says she can't afford it, and I say, okay, we can help you do that. Those are the best moments.
So I want to ask you this, as a grieving mom, do kids that are Libby's age and have like the same interests and stuff in her, do you have just such an immense place in your heart for those for those children?
Absolutely.
I have such a love for, a lot of the main audience that we do our presentations to, not all, but the main audience is high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I have such a love and a special place in my heart for those kids, because Lindy, Christopher, and Kamryn will forever be 15, 17, and 20.
Yeah.
So there's just, I know for me, there's just a special, really special place in my heart for kids those age.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange, I don't know if it's the same for you. It's kind of a double-edged sword for me sometimes, because Libby will always be 10. So when I see girls around that age, it's that of like, I remember, and I feel so much for those girls. But then because now her friends and her, friends, they're growing up. So now it's like I see people that are the age that she should be.
Yes.
And it's another kind of ache.
Everything is bittersweet, and it's a double-edged sword. But in that pain, there is also healing in it. It's painful, but it's priceless.
Yeah. That's why I said the helping people. When I can help people, that were her age or are her age, the age she should be. That is really where I get the joy and the healing. I think is such a big thing. Yes. So can you guys talk me through what you do? I know, just share with my audience what you guys are doing to kind of spread the word, because it was a drunk driver, right, that caused the accident. So your mission now is kind of to talk to people about drunk driving and the dangers and how it impacted you. So can you talk to me a little bit about what you do?
So we're from Louisiana, and drinking is just big here. It's just part of the culture.
Yeah.
The guy that killed the kids, his name was John Lundy. He was 54 years old, and he was 3 times the legal limit. I know when I was in driver's ed years ago, they didn't teach us anything about we learned the rules of the road, and that was it. I just feel like if I would have heard a story like ours, that would have sat with me and just changed my outlook forever, So being that we have so many, because Lindy was an amazing photographer, but literally was born with a camera in her hand. We have videos upon videos upon videos. So I think that's why so many people feel like they know them. Yeah. And then when we get in front of these high school students, they see these kids their age doing the same thing, doing the TikTok dances, all that. and they can really see like that can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
And then we just, tell our story. We tell them about the kids, but then we twist it around like, what if you would do this to a family? You wouldn't mean it. Of course you wouldn't mean it. We don't think he meant it.
Right.
But when you take that one chance, you can do that. So I feel like there's a gap in that area where kids aren't, driver's ed should be one place where they get it. So that is one thing with one of our future goals, get curriculums in place. But our biggest thing right now is just getting in front of as many high school kids as we can. This past school year, we just wrapped up our 2024-2025 school year as far as presentations. And we spoke to over 7,000 students. I think we did 38 presentations across 4 different states. We primarily stay in Louisiana just because this is where we're from. But we have a request form on our website. We can travel. We can, make arrangements and all of that, but just to get our story in front of these kids, because we'll get messages from the kids that tell us, oh my gosh, thank y'all for coming. I will never drink, we see what the kids say, and we know that it really resonates with them. And, that's what any parent would want their kid to learn. Driving is not, it's, you do it every day. So you don't think it's as serious as it is.
Right.
We just want them to take an extra second to think whenever they drive. What we started calling our program that we do is rethink the drive. Just take a second thought to realize it's not so like just because you do it all day and you get used to it, you don't think it's important. Every drive is important. Anything can happen in any drive. And I think it's just creating that sense of awareness for the high school kids is really impactful.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it's amazing that you've talked to so many people. Do you have what's kind of the future hope for the organization? Just kind of continuing the same thing?
Continuing this, we have a really good program that we kind of built over the years. We started off by, my mom explaining our family, who we are, how many kids she has, telling them about Lindy. And then we have videos that the videos are really special and important, but we have a whole collage of Lindy just really showing her personality. Then we go into Christopher and then Kamryn, and then that's where I take over the sad part. We let the kids get to know who they are and all of that. Then let them know what happened, then talk to them about, consequences and all of that. And we definitely want to just continue developing this program, get in front of more people. We filmed with MAD, I believe last year. So we are the focal point of their online victim impact panel. So when people get sentenced for DUIs and they have to take these courses, they will see our story. And we also filmed with Prime for Life. So just doing things like that to just continually raise awareness. Eventually we would like to, change laws around this because they're insane. You get a higher fine for littering than driving. It's just ridiculous the amount of chances we give to these impaired drivers. Like they just had one in North Louisiana. It was a deputy that got a DUI. So the DA said, well, he was a good guy and just dismissed his charges. I don't want to see his life go down the drain. He could have killed someone and took their life.
Exactly. So
just changing the mindset. Like when we have our upcoming, our first official fundraiser, it's a golf tournament. And, my husband's a golfer and he said, well, if you don't have alcohol, nobody's going to come. Like people want to drink. And I said, well, I live in a real world. I'm not asking people not to drink. I'm asking people to find a ride home. So we're trying to partner with Uber to get discount codes and then set up an Uber spot just to show like you can still drink. You can still just take 2 seconds to plan a ride home and you can save yourself and another family from a lot of devastation by just taking these little tiny measures.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's practicing what you preach, I guess, in that way. Yeah. And showing people how they can do that in measurable ways. So,
and the consequences if you don't do that, because can you imagine living with the weight if you cause this to another family?
Yeah.
If you survive, I can't imagine the weight of that. I truly can't,
Yeah.
and it's such an easy fix. It really takes just minutes of preparation, planning, devising whatever. It really doesn't take much effort, but it's to bring the awareness to people of what they need to do, to just increase that awareness, can save lives, innocent lives. Most of the time it's just very innocent people. I mean, we did nothing wrong that night. We were just coming home from a basketball game. We had our seatbelts on. We were doing the speed limit. We did nothing wrong that night.
Right.
And my family, there is nothing that hasn't been affected by what has happened to our family. My days are still very, very difficult, adjusting to the empty house, the silence in my house. I had to end up retiring from my job. Overnight, we lost the 3 kids. I had to end up retiring from my job, and I had empty nests overnight. And, from one man's decision, one selfish decision that just totally redirected every single area of our life. It was Lindy, Christopher, and Kamryn physically died that night, but I can tell you, my family as a whole, we all died that night. So to try and rebuild after such a devastating loss is something that, only through our faith in God have we been able to survive this. I feel like I have been in the valley of the shadow of death, and I have just had to learn depths and realms of the Lord that I was so desperate. I needed it to be able to survive. Being in that valley, I have learned, have just had just such a better relationship with the Lord. I have learned to lean on Him and trust Him in ways I don't think I could have ever known before, had something like this had happened,
Yeah, and until you go through it, I don't think you can even come close to imagining how the rest of your life is impacted. And
tell her all the time.
Yeah, time makes it different, but not necessarily easier.
Before all of this happened, I remember being at one of my husband's friend's house, and his mom had lost her son to suicide 20 years before, and it was a random New Year's night, and she was crying. And I remember telling my mom, man, it's been 20 years, and she was still crying. And then now on ours, I said, I get it. I get it. You don't realize how much hurt people, like so many bereaved parents, and you just don't. You think, oh, it's their birthday, they must be sad. And it doesn't matter if there's birthday, a regular Tuesday, it doesn't matter.
For me, I could be in a grocery store and I see gummy bears and my heart's broken. Kamryn's last text to me was, Mom, can you please pick me up some gummy bears? She loved gummy bears. And in the pocket of the door where she was sitting, in the crash that night, you could see her little half-eaten bag of her gummy bears. It is, it could be anything. I was just watching some worship music on YouTube, and there was a little boy that was singing, and he reminded me so much of Christopher. He had a little ring on his middle finger. Christopher had a little ring on his middle, and I longed for him so. It could be anything at any time of the day. You just never know.
Absolutely.
It's
Is there anything that has helped in particular? Because I know, there's such huge ups and downs. It's not a straight line. I feel the same way. It depends on the day. I'm all over the place most of the time. Is there anything that either of you, or both of you, your family as a whole, does to kind of honor the kids that brings you joy? Do you have any traditions or anything like that you do?
It's very difficult because Katie's the only one that still lives here now. My children are all over, So she's the only child that still lives here. But I mean, me personally, I find peace in going sit with them at the cemetery. I spend a lot of time. I have a grave cleaning kit in my car. I mean, their resting place is beautiful. But it's the only thing I can physically do for them. I found that I used to not know what to do, like for their birthdays and things like that. I didn't plan anything, but now since some time had passed, I find it's better for me to go and do something that's honoring to them and spend the day doing, something. Like for Christopher's birthday last year, we had a presentation in Lake Charles, and it was such it helped me so much to be able to honor him on his birthday. So that kind of switched a little bit. We just do so many things in their honor. It's kind of just our daily. It's just our daily now. So, I mean, those kids are more, which is hard to even fathom, but they are more a part of my life now than when they were here. Any opportunity that I have to honor them, to say their names. I mean, Katie has just done such an amazing job with the nonprofit. Anything to do with them is what really helps us to get through, and the rest of the kids. They watch what we do, from other states, and it's the platform that the Lord has given us is really, really just, I'm just so grateful for it.
Grief takes a lot of toll on relationships, I've found. So it's inspiring to see the two of you and how you work together, and obviously, care and care for and love each other so much, kind of on this mission together. It's very inspiring.
If she would have left me that night, look, I don't know.
Yeah,
what I would have did.
Honestly, there were moments at the beginning when I wished I wouldn't have made it, because I knew the
road ahead.
The road ahead is just going to be so unbearable, But since then, when it first happened, I just couldn't hardly speak. I just was so hopeless. I just really could not see a way forward. And, I didn't even know what I needed. I wasn't mad at God, but I couldn't even speak. I just didn't even know what to try and grab at. And, God really met me where I was. And what I needed is a more clearer and in-depth reality of heaven. Now, I've been a Christian a long time. I knew all what I knew about heaven, but I needed more because my babies were there. I had never experienced a loss like that.
Yeah.
And, my legs were broken really, really bad. I was in a wheelchair for months and all that. So we just had to sit home, and we would put the TV on, me and my husband. And the Lord used a YouTube video to begin to restore my hope. So you never know what God will use. But, when you are so broken and so desperate to even cry out to him, he will meet you where you are. And the testimony of a lady named Dr. Mary Neal, we found her. And the Lord used that woman's testimony to begin to restore my hope. I watched every video that she did. I mean, thousands of times. Katie can tell you, every time she came to the house, Mary, her testimony was on for a whole year. And once the Lord had restored my hope, began to restore my hope, I said, okay, Lord, I'll never understand why this happened. I said, I don't know why you allowed me to survive this crash. I said, but whatever it is you want me to do, I said, the answer is yes. And I mean, I truly meant it from the bottom of my heart. And then that's when things just began to shift, and we got in touch. A Sudden Impact had contacted us, which we worked with them to do a lot of the presentations, and God's plan just began to evolve and just bring life and increase back into our lives in ways that I could not have imagined, because I truly saw no way forward. I could not grasp a path forward, but he had plans that I couldn't have even dreamed of.
Yeah. Well, it's impossible to think of a way forward most of the time because our kids are so special to us. So to kind of wrap up here, for running out of time, could you, either of you, both of you, just tell me a little bit about each of them, of Lindy and Kamryn and Christopher?
Time to shine.
All right. So, Lindy was our memory maker. She photographed, videoed, and documented everyday life. She was born with a camera in her hand. She was the most talented young woman I have ever had the opportunity to be around in my life. At the time of the crash, she was a sophomore at Nicholls State University. She was majoring in marketing. And she had just landed her dream job. She had just gotten hired as the campus photographer, and she was supposed to start that position in January of 22, but unfortunately that day never came. She was homecoming queen. She loved life and lived it to the absolute fullest. She had the most unique sense of humor. A day with her was just a day full of laughter. It's one of the things that I long and miss for so much in my home is the laughter. The silence in my home is so loud. But Lindy was beautiful. She loved Kendra Scott jewelry. She was bougie and broke. I don't know how you could pull that off, but she did it. But she was an amazing, talented young woman that my heart just longs for her so much. Christopher was 17 at the time of the crash. He was a junior in high school. He was very, very academically inclined. He was striving to make a 32 on his ACT score. At the time of the crash, his high score was a 26. On the way to that basketball game, he said, "Mom, I need study guides in science and math." He said, "You think you could order me some?" And I tell you, I have no doubt that he would have achieved that goal. He had his future meticulously planned. He wanted to be a software engineer like his older brother, Ren, and he had already began to take coding classes and just doing all the prep work that was needed. He was an amazing athlete. He won first team All-State for basketball that year. He won the Golden Glove Award for baseball, and he was going to play football the following year. He was a mama's boy. He was known for his integrity. If Christopher gave you his word, I guarantee you could count on it. He never, ever left my home without saying, "Mom, I love you." If I could have prayed for a son and I would have said, "Lord, I would love a son. I would want him to be this, 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 and this," I can honestly tell you, Christopher checked every single box. He was and is my beautiful boy. Kamryn was 15 at the time of the crash. She was 41 days short of her 16th birthday, 41 days short of getting her driver's license, which she was so excited for. Kamryn had the kindest heart I've ever had the privilege of raising a child with such an empathetic heart. When she saw someone hurting, it broke her little heart. She was my little songbird. When we would when I get home from work, she would say, "Mom, let's go drive." So we get in the car, we put our seatbelts on, she put her playlist on. And when I tell you, she sang from the time we left the driveway to the time we came back. She wanted to follow in Katie's footsteps, to be her degree was health information management. She was an auditor for inpatient coding. And we went to Katie's house one day while we were practice driving, and she saw Katie steaming her face while working. She loved self-care. She loved the face mask, and the eyelash serum, and the hair mask. And when she saw Katie doing that, she was like, "You get to steam your face while you wear it? That's what I want to do." So, she was only 15, but Kamryn was a cheerleader. She played softball, and she had the biggest heart that I have ever seen in my life. She was beautiful. She was my baby girl, and I miss them so much. But they were amazing kids with the brightest of futures ahead of them. And I look forward to the day that, I will get to see them again. But until then, I want to be here and present, and I want to do any and everything I can to honor them and to be the hands and feet of the Lord, and hopefully to touch other people's lives who are struggling with unimaginable grief and loss and disappointment, and let them know that, don't lose hope, because Jesus has a plan for each and every one of our lives, and that is a plan. So that's just a little bit about my babies.
I know we could go on
that
forever.
subject.
I know how that is, but oh my goodness, Dawn and Katie, thank you so much for sharing your children and siblings with us. I have a couple comments here from people. Hi everyone, good to see you all together for this conversation. Scott is just saying hello. Thank you for sharing. You had so much confusion during that search to find everyone. Sue was saying that, Katie, while you were talking about what you were going through to find everyone at the hospitals. Proof that you're impacting people all over. Jackie says, I just want them to know that after hearing their story, I live in British Columbia, Canada. I've used their story to talk to any young people I know. So, yeah, thank you, Jackie.
That's encouraging. Thank you so much.
So for anyone who wants to find out more information about Simmons3 and the nonprofit and what you guys are doing, where are the best places to find you?
We have a website. It's Simmons3.com. I have a TikTok. That's where I'm most active. It's my first and last name and a 1. Katie DeRouen. It's kind of hard to pronounce. I have Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Just you can type in my name and we'll pop right up.
All right, sounds good. And I will also leave links in the description when I post these videos as well. Katie and Dawn, thank you again so much for joining us. That was just inspiring, and I love hearing about your family. And so sorry for everything that you went through. I can empathize, but appreciate you sharing your story with the world. It's making a difference.
Well, thank you, and I'm very sorry for your loss as well. I understand the mama's heart.
Yeah, it is. And thank you everyone who joined us for the show live. And thank you for anyone who's watching on the replay. We will catch you guys next time on the Mourning Coffee Podcast. Have a good week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.